What we can learn from Taiwan in the COVID-19 pandemic Part 1. The following media is from a German friend. I had it translated because a lot of what he describes applies to our situation here in most Western countries as well. What we can learn from Taiwan. It lies next to China, but reports only a few people infected with corona. Why is Taiwan coping with the crisis so much better than the European countries, and almost without coercive measures? We Europeans and our damn arrogance, my sister wrote via WhatsApp the other day. We could have done it differently. At the time, she was sitting in her not very big house near Berlin. The two sons did not go to school or daycare, and her husband, like her, made a home office at the dining table. In my hometown of Taipei, I watched the daily press conference of the Taiwan Minister of Health, who reported the biggest increase in COVID-19 infections to date in one day, exactly 10. In total, the number of infected people in Taiwan was 77. In Germany, the break of the 10,000 mark was expected for the next day. Both countries had reported their first case within a few days. What effective crisis management looks like has since been better observed in Taiwan than in Germany. The National Crisis Center had already started work one day before the first confirmed case. 3 days later, the export of face masks was banned. The extension of the New Year holidays, which kept all schools nationwide closed for another 2 weeks, came into effect when the total number of infected had increased to 10. In Taipei, only a few people got on the subway without a face mask. If we are honest, we have to admit that such crisis management in Germany would have been desirable, but hardly conceivable. The scope of politics is limited by what the people find acceptable, and none of these measures would have been approved at a comparable time. School closings in Hamburg due to flu in the Bavarian province. One can imagine the outcry. Taiwan is smaller than Germany, it is more densely populated and closer to China. The memory of the SARS epidemic in 2003 has deeply burned into national memory, the scandalous cover-up of the outbreak by the Chinese authorities, the excruciating uncertainty and the more than 70 deaths that have been reported on the island because the people responsible reacted incorrectly. If commentators now refer to SARS to explain the different responses to the coronavirus in East Asia and Europe, they are certainly correct. But is it the whole explanation? Disparaging remarks about face masks? This leaves Taiwanese stunned. When the crisis started, I was still visiting Germany and communicating with my Taiwanese friend every day. For them there was no more important and almost no other topic. I occasionally had to play act and pretend my sympathy. Again and again, she asked me to stock up on face masks that were becoming scarce in Taiwan before I returned, which I reluctantly did, only to find that they were barely available. My hint that experts questioned the usefulness of the masks did not impress them. I would say that as well if people can't buy any anyway. In Taiwan, the face mask has been part of the national etiquette since SARS. Anyone who has a cold and shows up in public without it is considered ruthless. Even waiters in restaurants and trainers in gyms mask themselves in such cases, which triggers a reflexive discomfort for me, coupled with a subliminally aggressive impulse. If this is really necessary, I have to ask. Does it have to be that way? On my last visit to Berlin, however, I was sitting in the subway opposite a woman who was coughing violently and caught myself thinking whether she shouldn't wear a mask. The commuter schizophrenia between cultures. So now I'm back in Taiwan. There are countless stories circulating on social media about Taiwanese living abroad who would like to protect themselves and their environment with a face mask, but do not do so for fear of the reaction of their fellow human beings. A friend of my friend, who lives in the Netherlands, only masks in connection with headphones and loud music, so that at least they don't have to hear the derogatory remarks. Nobody believes that face masks offer complete protection, but firstly, there are limited effective measures available in the current situation, and secondly, it is about a signal to the environment. I am aware of the danger and do my part to protect myself and you. Taiwanese are stunned that this is being negatively sanctioned by the environment. In fact, no one in Germany is bullied who drinks beer or eats a kebab on the subway, but if someone takes too much care, we get angry. Funny, isn't it? In some cases, people may believe that a face mask indicates that the person is infected. Conversely, others may read the assumption from the mask that everyone else is sick and therefore dangerous. Basically, a masked face evokes threatening associations with bank robbers, terrorists and other criminals. Those who mask themselves have something to hide. In the case of Asians, there is also one of the oldest racist prejudices that Western culture knows about them: they are opaque, not transparent. Asians always hide something, their real face, and if they have bad intentions, they hide them behind a smile. There is hardly a travelogue from the 19th century that the Chinese do not call cunning or wrong. We Westerners, on the other hand, are always honest and upright, and instead of masking ourselves, we tell each other the truth to our faces. Preferably loudly. What is European arrogance? When my sister spoke of European arrogance, a proverbial phrase in East Asia, she meant even more. It is not only because politics underestimated the danger that massive cuts in public life were only made to us when it was already too late for prevention and the only way to limit the damage. As mentioned above, it was also about anticipating what the population would and would not accept. In contrast to the People's Republic of China, Taiwan's highly effective crisis management manages with surprisingly few bans. For the most part, it is based on recommendations and voluntarily followed rules, which is why effectiveness is primarily due to the discipline of the population that politicians can trust. Nobody complains when body temperature is measured when entering a hotel or restaurant, which I think is happening across the board. Here we are approaching another relevant stereotype, namely the somehow collectivist orientation of the Asians. Often, this may be due to our inability to distinguish people from this region of the world. Where we do not perceive individuals, but only members of an ethnic group, we do not assume individualism. This is called a circular conclusion. That being said, the stereotype does have something to do with the Confucian DNA, which does not determine the behavior of many East Asian societies, but does shape it. This is not only true in times of the epidemic. When it rains in Taipei, employees of the transport companies stand with a loudspeaker in front of the entrances to the subway stations and warn of the slippery floor. I would then like to step in front of them and say, "Pack up your loudspeaker, we are grown-ups who know very well how to get into a train station without an accident." The warning about the wet floor comes to me as an assumption that I am too stupid to conclude from falling raindrops that there is an increased risk of slipping. Paternalism allergy is part of individualism, or is it just an exaggerated self-perception in this case? I assume that I am supposed to need the warning. Taiwanese, on the other hand, register a polite gesture that they appreciate, precisely because it is done without need, only out of friendliness. It has little to do with them personally. The aggressive impulse in me is just the echo of my own insinuation, not the reaction to theirs. Being exposed to the unquestioned impulses that elevate me above others, that's not the worst definition of arrogance.